Здравейте, аз се казвам Sarah, аз съм студентка в Varna, аз съм от град London, and I'm here for my second year in a row to read for the European Literature Night. And I'm reading Journey to the River Sea by Eva Ibbotson. It was a good school, one of the best in London. Miss Banks and her sister Emily believed that girls should be taught as thoroughly and as carefully as boys. They had bought 3 houses in a quiet square, a pleasant place with plain trees and well-behaved pigeons, and put up a brass plate saying, "The Mayfair Academy for Young Ladies," and they had prospered. For a while, the sisters prized proper learning. They also prized good manners, thoughtfulness, and care for others. The girls learned both algebra and needlework. Moreover, they took in children whose parents were abroad and needed somewhere to spend the holidays. Now, some 30 years later, in the autumn of 1910, the school had a waiting list, and those girls who went there knew how lucky they were. All the same, there were times when they were very bored. Miss Carlyle was giving a geography lesson in the big classroom which faced the street. She was a good teacher, but even the best teachers had trouble making the rivers of southern England seem unusual, and exciting. Now, can anyone tell me the exact source of the River Thames, she asked. She passed her eyes along the row of desks, missed the plump Hermione, the worried-looking Daisy, and stopped by a girl in the front row. "Don't chew the end of your pigtail," she was about to say, but she didn't say it, for it was a day when this particular girl had the right to chew the curved ends of her single heavy braid of hair. Maya had seen the motor stop outside the door. She had seen old Mr. Murray in his velvet-collared coat go into the house. Mr. Murray was Maya's guardian, and today, as everyone knew, he was bringing some news about her future. Maya raised her eyes to Miss Carlyle and struggled to concentrate. In the room full of fair and light brown heads, she stood out, with her pale, triangular face, her widely spaced dark eyes, her ears laid bare by the heavy rope of black hair that gave her an unprotected look. "The Thames rises in the Cotswold Hills," she began in her low, clear voice, "in a small hamlet. Only what hamlet? She had no idea." The door opened. 20 heads turned. "Would Maya Fielding come to Mrs. Banks' room, please?" said the maid. Maya rose to her feet. Fear is the cause of all evil, she told herself. But she was afraid of the future, afraid of the unknown, afraid in the way of someone who is alone in the world. Miss Banks was sitting behind her desk. Her sister, Miss Emily, stood beside her. Mr. Murray was in a leather chair by the table, rustling papers. Mr. Murray was Maya's guardian, but he was also a lawyer and never forgot it. Things had to be done carefully and slowly and written down. Maya looked round the assembled faces. They looked cheerful, but that could mean anything. And she bent down to pat Mrs. Banks' spaniel, finding comfort in the feel of his round, warm head. "Well, Maya, we have some good news," said Miss Banks, a woman now in her 60s, frightening to many with an amazing bust that would have done splendidly on the prow of a sailing ship. She smiled at the girl in front of her, a clever child and a brave one, who had fought hard to overcome the devastating blow of her parents' death on a train crash in Egypt 2 years ago. The staff knew how Maya had wept night after night under her pillow, trying not to wake her friends. If good fortune was to come her way, there was no one who deserved it more. "We have found your relatives," Miss Banks went on. "And will they?" Maya began, but she couldn't finish. Mr. Murray now took over. "They are willing to give you a home." Maya took a deep breath. A home? She had spent her holidays for the past 2 years at the school. Everyone was friendly and kind. But a home? "Not only that," said Miss Emily, but it turns out that the Carters have twin daughters about your age. She smiled broadly and nodded as if she herself had arranged the birth of the twins for Maya's benefit. Mr. Murray patted a large folder on his knee. As you know, we've been searching for a long time for anyone related to your late father. We knew that there was a second cousin, a Mr. Clifford Carter, but all efforts to trace him failed until 2 months ago, when we heard that he had immigrated 6 years earlier. He had left England with his family. So where is he now? Maya asked. There was a moment of silence. It was as though the good news had run out, and Mr. Murray looked solemn and cleared his throat. He is living, the Carters are living, on the Amazon. In South America, in Brazil, put in Miss Banks. Maya lifted her head. On the Amazon, she said. In the jungle, do you mean? If you liked what I read, there are many other stories read in different languages. Have a watch.